Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's operator meeting. My name is Jenny Lehman, and I'll be your host today. We will take all questions at the end of all presentations, so just chat those in as they come to you. First up, we have a quick announcement by Ben Frizzell. Ben, you can take it away.
Thanks, Jenny. I just wanted to let everyone know, first, my name is Ben Frizzell. I have worked with many of you in this past year, but I am pleased to announce that I have taken the Planning and Permitting Manager, formerly held by Sabrina Trask. And that's my quick FYI. And at our next operator meeting, we are currently in some hiring process, and we will have some updates related to some hiring. But that's it. I just wanted to do a quick introduction to that. So thank you, and hope to work with most of y'all coming up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Next up, we have Steve Wheeler with a Form 19 update. Steve, are you ready?
Yeah. Sorry, kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the agenda here.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, Jenny, do you have that on your screen?
Yes, you're good.
Oh, okay, good deal. So good morning. I'm Steve Wheeler. I'm with the Integrity Engineering Group. Just going to talk real quick about some fields on the Form 19 spills report. I guess probably some people would ask, hey, why is this being brought up, and why is it by an engineer, not an EPS? So the sections that our group specifically leverage are the root cause. So on the Form 19 itself, it's under the corrective actions report. We do have established failure modes that can be that can be attributed to the spills. So we have that drop down. But the big thing I'm going to talk about here is just those two descriptive fields. So the root cause analysis field, and then on the back end, the preventative measures descriptive field. And so what we're really trying to ask operators for is more specifics, to be honest. We've got this drop down, and a lot of times what we tend to see is just a regurgitation of just the failure modes that we already have listed in the drop down. But it's our impression that with a little effort, most operators can really establish a more with a little investigation, they can figure out the acute form of failure. And then really also include some of those regional or operational similarities that can be on the back end applied across the field. In some cases it's more of an isolated failure, and but there's still potentially some lessons learned there as well. I think the one of the big things here is that if we see that the operator is attempting to understand the front end or the root cause of the spill, then they can on the back end address things in a very also discrete manner. So in the case of, say, like our biggest form of failure, that'd be corrosion, right? Almost half of our spills on any given year are corrosion failures. So is it microbial induced corrosion? Then on the back end, we're expecting the operator to maybe address it with like a chemical treatment program. If it's like an external corrosion failure, hey, does the operator even have any cathodic protection in place? If it's more of a conventional internal corrosion failure, not microbial induced, we see a lot of times on, say, like dump lines, when a replacement section goes in, hey, can we reestablish the bedding so that gravity isn't working against us in terms of like a low spot? And some of that can be operationally, we can make operational or construction adjustments to prevent headaches or prevent future spills going forward. So I think in terms of that preventative measures field, what we don't want is, what we certainly don't want is just a high level, any kind of high level boilerplate language. So a lot of times what we have tended to get is, pretty, yeah, pretty neutered, soft language in terms of operators, about how operators are going to adhere to their leak detection and repair program per, API RP 1175. That doesn't really establish any details for us, right? It's not, it's not really, it's not providing any value to us or showing us that the operator understands how to fix future issues. We are looking for details here. So I think that's one of the biggest issues, with kind of that boilerplate language. It doesn't establish, it's not exactly adding confidence in our operators here. So just to move on here and give a couple of examples, or a few examples here. So, my top example, we've got an operator that, they're really using soft language here. We've got a hole discovered, but we're making us, we're assuming it's corrosion, and on the back end, we're going to monitor our engineering and administrative controls, but that really doesn't establish that, hey, they understand why the corrosion happened. It doesn't tell us that, hey, we're actually going to make a change, right? Monitor is not, hey, we're actually going to change our operational procedures, or begin or adjust or our chemical treatment program. So that type of soft language doesn't, like I say, it doesn't add value to what we're trying to get out of these two fields. So but then to just jump forward in that middle example here, right? We had an operator that, okay, well, we don't have the resources or time in-house to do that, but we have a really great service company in Baker that can do some of this investigation for us, right? We don't have a lab, but we can send it off. We did a cutout. We sent it off to Baker. See our attached report here. Find out it's microbial induced corrosion. Okay, so then on the back end, what are we trying to do about it? Well, if we just did a cutout of the one failed pipe, then it's probably we're just gonna kind of kick the can down the road, and it's gonna be a problem, 6 months down the road and 10 feet down the line. So we're gonna go ahead and do a full replacement of this section with flex steel piping. Pretty great product that's mixed materials. So it's got a liner. So that's showing us that the operator understands that the operational conditions of an injection line, they're pretty indicative of having a lot of corrosive issues. So, hey, we're going to change materials here. So there's some operational changes that they're making here. I think what would take, this type of preventative measure over the top and say, hey, we really understand it. We really understand our issues is where they're going to apply it elsewhere. So in that last example, this operator did a great job of both the investigation side and the preventative measures side. And as you can see, right, they're talking about a 4-inch flex line and how it ruptured. This is not a very long description, but it's very detailed. So they're telling us the operational conditions, the material, some size in there. They talk a little bit here about the pump station and injection well, right? So that's potentially, while not disclosing the very specific details on the failure pressure, potentially a higher pressure situation there for this type of pipe. And then kind of as you look at the back end of this root cause description, they see that there's probably a shortfall in their construction protocols, right? So they didn't do a really good job as far as they understand that they didn't do a good enough job for inspection when it was installed before it was backfilled, right? So so when we move on to the preventative measures section, they do talk about leveraging a variety of things, right? They're talking about their SCADA system. They can probably leverage that with some different alarms, or change those type of alarms. Certainly, the operator's talking here about their inspection procedure. And obviously, anybody who's dealt with, these mixed material pipe, I think most folks understand that it's very different than a carbon steel pipe. The handling. So the handling of these types of pipes is wildly different than a carbon steel. It doesn't have, in a lot of cases, it doesn't have the type of mechanical durability that with some exceptions, right? Flex steel is a pretty good product, but some of these other mixed materials like Flex Line, they're kind of, they kind of mince words with their descriptions on the titles here, but the handling procedures need to be very, very specific. So the operator kind of establishes that, and they're really trying to leverage that because they note here in their description, hey, we have other injection lines that this type of procedure change needs to apply to. So that's the big thing, is just extrapolating out new procedures or change procedures so that we can prevent it in the future. So that's really the sum of what we're getting at here, folks. With some of the analysis, if you can't do it in-house, like I say, we had an operator just utilize their service company in Baker, and it really kind of helped establish some of these programs moving forward. So I think that's all I got, but we see this stuff all the time in our annual our annual spills report. So that'll be coming up here next month. That's all I got. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. You could stop the screen share. Perfect. Next up, we have a Form 3 and 3A updates from Chris Eisinger.
Thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everyone. So what I wanted to do was go over some changes we've made over the last several weeks since the last operator meeting. A couple to the Form 3, at least the calculations behind some of the numbers in the Form 3. And then talk about some changes we've made to make the Form 3A more effective. And I am going to share my screen. So the first Form 3 update that I wanted to let people know about is with regards to out-of-service wells. We had not been incorporating correctly accounting for out-of-service wells in the average daily per well production calculation specifically for option 3 and 4 operators. And so we have revised that process to incorporate the better accounting. And so what the process is now is that we run a calculation for all operators and we exclude their out-of-service wells. If that initial calculation qualifies the operator as an option 1 or option 2, that calculated average daily per well production value will not change, and that is in fact the calculation. But if the operator designation is an option 3 or option 4, we run that same calculation. However, we do include the out-of-service wells. And there were a number of reasons that we needed to do this. It should not, for most people, have an impact on their calculated values, or it'll be somewhat subtle. But if you have questions about it, you can reach out to myself or other staff, financial assurance staff. The second change with regards to Form 3 is the way we have been dealing with transfer of operatorships, so Form 9s. Up until recently, these were not necessarily being incorporated into the Form 3, these changes in assets and operators' assets. And we believe that has been fixed. The things that will be impacted by this is that if you are an operator who has had a transfer, the number and characteristics of those wells and other facilities for which the financial assurance is required will change, as well as the average daily per well production calculation used to determine the option that the operator qualifies for. And I did want to make people aware that, for average daily per well production values, that the calculation that we use includes all of the well's entire Form 7 production history for that previous 12-month calculation window, regardless of who the operator is. So when we are determining that value as stipulated in the rules, we would look at the 12-month window, even if you were not operating it for part of that window, or at least the first part, if you acquired it, or in cases where you sold it, that of course would drop from the calculation. So hopefully those two things are now correct with regards to the Form 3. Again, I know operators have reached out to us with questions, especially about, having been involved with a transfer. And if you continue to have issues or not seeing things show up correctly in your Form 3, please reach out to myself, and I will try to sort that out and see what's happening. So the Form 3A, we've done a lot of work on just trying to improve the process both on the back end and the front end. And the thing we spent quite a bit of time on was trying to improve the existing surety instrument information for operators. We have cleaned up bond types. In legacy bonds, there were anomalous or unique bond types that we've tried to streamline and make more consistent. We have removed combined instruments from operators' Form 3As. This was a source of confusion, as combined instruments were an ECMC administrative instrument type that didn't really have any relevance to the operators themselves. So we've removed those. We've tried to improve the completeness and accuracy of the digital information. A lot of this bond information has been maintained in paper forms and paper files, and so we wanted to improve that information that's in the database. As you work with your Form 3A going forward, if you have questions or concerns about any sureties that are missing or the details are incorrect, please reach out to financial assurance staff or myself, and we'll try to sort through those on a case-by-case basis. The second thing that we've done with the Form 3A is to improve the process for amending existing surety bonds. So this would be using riders to change the amount of an existing instrument. And I hope it's very intuitive, but the process is on the Instruments tab of the Form 3A. You will now see a button or label that says amend amount on the far right next to a surety bond, that is a possibility to amend. When you click on that, it will open up a window that will show all the information for the existing instrument, auto-populated. You want to check that just to make sure that is correct and that you're looking at the right surety instrument. There is one input box where you will enter the amended amount and matching it exactly as what's on the rider document. After you've done that, you click Save, and then you will be allocating that amended instrument value as applicable to the given rule financial assurance obligation. So if it's a plugging type bond that you amended and you're going to apply that to your new plugging financial assurance obligation, you would do that, allocate that in the Rule 702 section. I do want to emphasize you need to send rider documentation to the ECMC financial assurance staff, along with any other new instruments, as the staff needs that in order to review and verify and ultimately approve the Form 3A. Here are some screenshots that just show there's that amend amount button you'll see now for any surety bond for which you can provide a rider to change the amount. So hopefully that will streamline the process for everyone. When you do click on that, you get this window up on the right side of the screen. And like I said, it auto populates the information for that bond, and you would simply enter the amount in that white box where it indicates you to input it. The last Form 3 update is just more cosmetic and a utility change in terms of the allocation summary tab. So that is the sort of a summary of all of your instruments, new, existing, and we've changed that now to allow for these amended instruments to show up. And we ask that operators use the print new instruments or new and amended instruments button that will show up on that page to print a list, and that you would include that printed list with any instruments you mail in to the financial assurance staff. This information just makes it a much faster, more efficient process as the financial assurance staff goes through and just checks to make sure that you have provided matching information for what you input on the Form 3A versus what is on the new and amended instrument or rider. So that's really all I had. There's been lots of other little changes, cosmetic with the Form 3A. But again, if you have any questions or issues, please reach out to one of us, myself, Debbie Lutz, or Scott Cuthbertson. And Jenny, at this point, I do have one other sort of side announcement that isn't on the agenda. And this is with regards to our produced water reporting. So on the Form 7 and the form on a new form that we're just about to release, the Form 47, the monthly produced water reporting is a new tab was added on the Form 7 in mid-January. We think we've worked out most of the issues that operators have brought up. If you should have any ongoing problems or questions about that Form 7 produced water reporting tab, please contact us, as many of you have. And I apologize if I've been slow to get back to you, but you can reach out to Greg, Duranlo, Corey, Essex, or myself. The other big new form is going to be a form for reporting your quarterly produced water by location. This is going to be the Form 47, and we are just now finalizing the form and template, doing internal and external testing this week. We are planning to release it next week. I don't think there should be any issues that would prevent us from doing that. And that is going to be available on the newer ECMC eForms platform, so not Web Forms, the other one. We are planning to do another operator meeting in roughly 2 weeks, and it will be, I think, about 30 minutes long, that will specifically be targeting towards produced water reporting. We're planning to provide guidance and do a walkthrough of the new Form 47 that you should all have available at that point. And then we'll also answer questions regarding both the monthly and this new form, produced water reporting. So as you start to work with these new produced water reporting forms, you can always wait and ask us questions in a couple weeks, and we'll be glad to answer them then. So that is all I have. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Next up, we have a Form 6B presentation by Nick McFarland. Nick, you can take it away.
Yep, let me just share my screen here real quick.
Yep.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Nick McFarland. I'm with the engineering group, and today we're going to do a brief introduction to the Form 6B. This is the annual out-of-service wells report. I would like to note up front that this form was made live a little over a week ago in Web Forms. So if you log in, you should be able to see that. And there is an additional supplemental guidance document available on our website underneath the forms section that covers pretty much everything that we'll cover here today in the presentation. So without further ado, what is the purpose of the Form 6B? First and foremost, 6B is required by Rule 434D7. and it allows operators to provide an annual progress report for all of their out-of-service wells. As you'll recall, an out-of-service well is a well that is intended to be plugged and abandoned, and for which a 6A out-of-service well designation has been submitted by the operator. I would like to note that although you can file multiple Form 6As, we are asking that only a single Form 6B is filed annually to cover all out-of-service wells for a given operator. And that should be filed no later than March 31st for the previous calendar year. So if you're going to be filing a Form 6B for calendar year 2023, that will be filed between January 1st of this year and March 31st. So what does the Form 6B include? It describes the operator's compliance with timelines outlined in 434D4, and these are the plugging timelines that were dependent upon the details of your 6A filing, so the number of wells that were under 6A and that sort of thing. Additionally, it will document progress for the following operations: plugging and abandonment, physical termination of any electric service to production facilities, purging of any piping, tanks, vessels, or other surface equipment, and the application of out-of-service locks and tags as defined by the 1100 series. And then finally, it'll identify wells in the following categories: those falling within 2,000 feet of a school facility, childcare center, high occupancy building unit, or residential building unit within a disproportionately impacted community, wells within a high priority habitat as defined by 1202C, and any out of service wells that have a leak reported on the operator CDPAG AQCC Reg 7 delayed repair list. So we'll walk through opening a Form 6B in Web Forms. Like any form, you will log into Web Forms and select a new form in the upper left-hand corner. I'll then select 6B from the menu, type in your operator number, and hit save. That will bring open the form. First and foremost, we'll fill out the operator and contact info. The only note here I have is recently there have been a few operators that had some email addresses that would not accept externally sourced emails, so please make sure the email that you enter allows externally sourced emails. Now, the meat of the report is the out-of-service wells report. On this page, first we're going to enter the service year for which you are filing the report for. If you're filing one today, that would be previous year, 2023. And then you're going to go ahead and select the download template button right here. This will download an Excel template to your machine, and that will contain the following information. There's basically a large number of columns in the spreadsheet. Columns A through G will be all the basic well information to include API, well name, county, that sort of thing. That data should all be pre-filled from our databases. Please do not edit the data, leave it as is. If you do happen to notice some sort of error or discrepancy, please reach out to the form contact and let us know, and we'll try and see what the issue is there. The rest of the columns, however, are able to be edited by the operator, and all of them must be filled out with the exception of N and T. So H through M will cover the previous categories that were mentioned, things like a high priority habitat and whether or not the well falls into that category. For those cells, you'll enter a simple yes or no. Column N will have the plugging date if the well has been plugged. If not, you may leave that cell empty. Columns O through S will document the progress of certain operations, such as the termination of electric service. For those categories, you're going to want to enter exactly these words: not started, in progress, or complete. Please ensure they're typed correctly. If not, there will be an error thrown. And then finally, column T will allow you to enter any free-form comments specific to each well. Once you've saved that Excel template and you think you've got all your data, you can go back to the web forms and hit upload completed template. That will upload all of the data you have entered into web forms, and it will give a little summary here of the data that has been uploaded. Please note this bottom box here is the most important. You want to make sure that there are no errors in any of the data, and errors in this case usually mean either something was mistyped or formatted incorrectly, or the cell was left empty when a value was required. If you do have any errors in the data, I would direct you to hit the View Uploaded Data button. This will open up a pop-out box in web forms that looks like this. There's a few features here to help you identify any errors that you may have made when filling out the template. First off, there is a checkbox right here, which if you hit that will hide all complete columns and show only erroneous columns or wells. If there are errors, you'll see this little blue information dot. If you hover over it, it should tell you which points of data have an error, and it will also highlight in red any erroneous data. And you can use that to cross-reference with your own Excel template and fill out or correct the data as needed. Once you've finally finished your Excel template, you've uploaded it, and there are no errors indicated, the lower half of this tab should have a summary screen that kind of outlines some of those broad categories. You can use this to cross-check with any of your internal metrics. Notice if there's any discrepancies there, and this also serves as a overview for us at the ECMC when we are reviewing these. I will note, however, that in the bottom section here, for wells that fall into certain categories, there are totals. However, those may add up to be more or less than the total number of wells. This is because any given well could be both within a school facility or near a child care center, so it's not going to add up to be a perfect match. Finally, at the bottom of the tab, there is a comment box to document Rule 434D compliance. This is free-form. We don't have hard requirements on exactly what you should put here, but some examples of what you can do to document your compliance with getting wells plugged would be a discussion of your year-over-year progress, or resource allocation in terms of things like your rig counts that are dedicated to out-of-service pluggings, how your budget may be changing to allow for more plugging, or any prioritization that you're having for wells in certain categories. And finally, just future plans, broadly speaking. Last is the Save and Submit tab, as we have on almost every web form. Any comments that you have that didn't land somewhere else, feel free to put them here. And that's all. If there are any questions, let me know.
Great, thanks, Nick. All right, before we move on to questions, I believe Steve has a few more updates on the form. Sorry. Right, you have some more updates on the Form 19, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not completely finalized yet, but I just wanted to let everyone know that changes to the Form 19 are coming that affect our integrity engineering group. So it's just to give folks a heads up. It's kind of coming down the line that that an engineering task may or may not be assigned depend at the EPS's discretion. It'll both a task and potentially an inspection by either of our integrity engineering inspectors. So we have a west side and an east side. So we may need to get out there with our guys. But certainly in the case of the initial form, those won't be assigned. But in the cases where it's an initial with the supplemental, that combined form, potentially there's an engineering task added. And then more so potentially if it's just a standalone supplemental, that's likely going to be where those appear. It's not established yet, but I just wanted to let everyone know that that's kind of coming down the pike, and it may include some, potentially if if those root causes and the preventative measures are adequate, then usually that's just going to be a past task. Potentially, if not, we may add a COA and then require some data on the back end, and probably so that can get closed out. The 19 that is, we may just require that be submitted on a Form 4 sundry. So just keep an eye out for that. We will publish some guidance on that in the future here. But I just want to give everybody a heads up. Thanks, Jenny.
Awesome, thanks, Steve. All right, we'll move on to questions now. First question, when is Form 1B annual registration due with payment?
That would be April 30th of the calendar year for the previous year.
Awesome. Next question, what if we have 3As in pending approval from last year? Will they be approved before the 3s are due this year?
Yes, that is the intention. If you run into a situation where you are submitting a new Form 3 before we have reviewed and processed Form 3A, please reach out to the financial assurance staff, and we can sort that out. And Scott, I don't know if you've got something to add there. Okay, so I don't think he does. Next question.
Okay, okay. Next question, do you have a time frame of when a bond can be released and received by operator once you've received a bond release request?
My understanding is that the process should happen fairly efficiently within days, to no more than a week or two. We have still been working through that process with the electronic form, the new form. And so that's likely why it is taking a bit longer than it should, but it's designed to be an efficient process.
Thank you. Next question, this might be a repeat. Please remind me, are Form 3s and 3As due annually?
Scott, you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to say something. So my understanding is that a Form 3 and 3A will be due annually if your circumstances of operation have changed. That is one reason for needing to submit one annually. There is also will be an annual review process that will be done, that if the ECMC sees a need for a change in financial assurance, that would also be a reason. With regards to minimum contributions, if you're an option 3 or 4 operator, you need to submit your contribution each year, and that will require a new Form 3A each year. The timing of that process, I think, is still being finalized. I know Scott and others have been working on that. So to answer that question, in many cases, you will need to submit a new Form 3 or 3A on a roughly annual basis, but not always.
Great, thanks, Chris. Next question, if Form 3A is denied, are operators supposed to file a revised Form 3A?
The answer to that question is yes. If you need clarification on why the Form 3A was denied, again, that is a question for financial assurance staff. And we do expect that you would be submitting a revised Form 3A. Again, if you have questions or something's not clear as to what the change is or why you need to submit a new one, please contact us.
Next question, when is the first quarterly water report due date?
Again, I'll try and answer that. I don't know if Greg is available, but
Yeah. Let me get him on here on the plan.
Hello, this is Greg Duranlo, Environmental Unit Manager. Apologize for the little delay there. Technically, the quarterly reporting is due 45 days after the close of the prior quarter. So that is imminent this week, February 15th, 2024. So we would request that operators go ahead and email the data if they have it available prior to the Form 47 release, which, as Chris described, is coming up very soon, if to meet the compliance deadline. But certainly they will again request that they go ahead and submit the required data, resubmit on a Form 47 when that form is available. And again, we're hoping that that form is available next week. So we were scrambling to try and get ahead of the deadline and didn't quite make it, but we're very close. So we want to work with operators to get the data in on that Form 47 when it's available.
Great. I believe this next question is also for you, Greg. And when is the first monthly water report due date? We have to have both?
So answering the second part of that question first, yes, the statute requires monthly reporting by well and quarterly reporting by location. Those are two separate reports. The monthly reporting is reported on the Form 7, and there is a new tab now on the Form 7 that is for the produced water data. And so that monthly produced water data report was required beginning September 2023. So if you have not filed any of those yet, we would ask that you file the prior month's required submittals as soon as possible on a Form 27. Excuse me, on a Form 7. We have, for the operators who were submitting those via email the entire time since September, we appreciate that very much. But we are also asking that those operators go ahead and refile formally on a Form 7 so that data gets uploaded in, can be accessed and used by the Produced Water Consortium.
Awesome, thanks, Greg. Next question for the monthly produced water report. What location ID should be used when volumes are disposed to a site in another state, like New Mexico or Utah?
So if there is not a ECMC issued facility ID number available for the disposal site, so that would include sites outside of Colorado, that would include sites that are permitted solely through CDPHE, those should be left blank. If that throws an error, please contact Chris, Corey, and myself, and we will make sure that gets resolved.
Great, thank you, Greg. Next question, how long can a well be out of service before Form 6B is required?
So if a well is out of service for any time during the report year, so if it became out of service on December 20th of 2023, it would require inclusion in the 2023 Form 6B.
Awesome. Next question. Do we have to file a 6B if we have 0 out of service wells for 2023?
No, if you have out of service wells, no report is required.
Great. Next question. With the changes in HPH, which layer should be used to answer the required question?
Honestly, since it's an annual question or annual report, just use the most up-to-date data as of the time of filing.
Next question. Do we need to do a retroactive 6B for the 2022 OOS list we filed also, or does the application of the 6B begin with the 2023 operating year?
2023 is the first year for which you will need to file.
Steve, this next question's for you. If a Form 19 is required after an assessment at closure of facility, wellhead or flow line, and it's related to a historic release, what is the expectation of root cause analysis information?
Sure. So I think so Tricia, a lot of times with these historic spills, right? It's a line that's been cut and capped, right, already, so that we are finding it in the field, right? It's adjacent to, say, an active line or a line that was recently active that we are that the operator is in the process of abandoning or removing, right? So the biggest thing there is that it's got to be correctly categorized. So an EPS may determine that, well, operator says it's historic, but it actually came from this active line. So that's part one. And then two, certainly in the case of those historic spills, we would still ask, right, if it's very obvious, right, it could easily be leveraged, right? That root cause of failure can be leveraged for future preventative measures. So always regardless of whether it's historical or recent spills, we are looking for the most complete detail that operators can provide there. So if it's available, certainly, and can be established, right? We're looking for the most complete detail. But there, like I say, the EPSs will have some sway in whether that engineering task is assigned and whether we need to look at that. If they're the first boots on the ground there. So if they decide, oh well, that's not looking like we need to get the integrity group in on this one, then they won't assign us a task. So there is some they have that's a little more subjective on the EPS's part as to whether we take a look at the historical stuff.
Great, thank you, Steve. Next question, any update on the Form 46A?
Sure, Jenny. As far as I know, the 46A is still in beta testing and being finalized. I don't have any more information on that at this point, but I believe that also is about to be released or should be soon. And I don't know, Greg, if you know anything additional, but yeah, that's all I know.
Next question, do you anticipate any revisions to the Form 47 data template prior to form release?
Chris, that's probably best for you to answer since you're working directly with the developers.
There should not be any that I'm aware of in what we've been doing recently. We've been making some modifications to make it clearer as to what we're asking for, including very rigid business rules. But as far as I know, the template is remained consistent with what has been provided previously.
Possibly related question, is there a template for Form 47 on the ECMC website?
I can take that one, Chris. And we'll, if you go back to the January operator meeting, that we released the template there. We didn't post it in the forms page because we don't have the form available yet. So go to the January 8th, I believe, operator meeting archive, and there is a link there. It opens a Google Sheet, which you can either save a copy of and work in Google Sheet land, or you can download a copy as an Excel file and work with it that way. I will warn you, it does not have a blank. It's an example template. That said, you should be able to work with it nonetheless to develop your data reporting needs.
Thank
And
you.
Greg, I would also add that we will try to, in the next day or two, create a home for the Form 47 on our forms page on the website. And on that, we will post that template. And if there's a newer version that hopefully is clear with blank tabs for inputting data, we will include that there for everybody.
Great, thank you. Last question, has there been any progress with removing the 1,000 row requirement for Form 7/7W data uploads?
At this point, no. The issue, as far as I understand it, is that when you go over a certain number of rows, it will cause the electronic form to time out and potentially affect other users as well and the system. We are looking at ways to increase that threshold to allow for more rows, but I don't have a timeline at this point as to when that will change. So for the time being, unfortunately, we need to have operators submit in 1,000 rows or less chunks.
Okay. Looks like we got another question for Chris with regard to OOS well calculation of ADP, WP. The incentive to put wells on OOS was that the production or lack thereof was not to be counted against an operator in determining which option they fell under. Why is this changing? Or did I misunderstand your presentation?
There's a number of reasons, and I would probably have to talk with you offline. And so if you want to reach out to me, whomever that asked that question, we can have that conversation about that. There is some reasons for it that are in line with what the rules state. So.
Perfect. I think that is the end of the questions. Let me just share my screen here. Our next operator meeting will be Tuesday, March 12th. And if you would like to be added to the operator email list, there is my email. Just please reach out and I'll get you added. Otherwise, I believe we are all set to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. See you next
Jenny,
month.
thank you so much for wonderful job hosting this meeting over the last many months. We really appreciate your work.
Of course. It's been fun. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Bye.
Bye.